Hi, I'm Tom Hattrick. Today at Mikunioz, for those unfamiliar with our products, we're going to show you a comprehensive overview on our Mikuni VM carburetor. If just wanting tuning information or procedures, or how to change a needle valve assembly, this information is available separately on other designated videos. Here we have a typical VM34 carburetor, one sold by Mikunioz and marketed through the Mikuni factory aftermarket and racing division. This is a Japanese made VM carburetor and very popular for any races pre-1982 for VMX racing, and by far the better of all the carburetors that fit that era of bike, and also popular on a lot of 70s and early 80s twin cylinder 4-strokes and so on and so forth. Just quickly to run through some of the features on this carburetor. Notice it has a lever choke operation. This is just an enricher that opens up another circuit to feed extra fuel in while trying to start or warming up. We do have an option also where you can change this out for a knob style choke, or also have we have a cable choke conversion kit which comes with a piston and fittings, and you just supply or manufacture your own cable to suit it. This here is your mixture screw. This here is what supplies volume of air into your pilot circuit for mixing with the fuel from your pilot jet. Over around here we have the idle speed screw, which raises or lowers the height of the slide for your idle position and your idle speed. This is your fuel inlet for use with an 8mm or 5/16 inside diameter fuel line. Okay, and here this is a breather here, and also an overflow for the bowl if you get excessive overflow out of the bowl, if you had a needle and seat failure or blockage, something holding it open, not so much a blockage. Following with the route of where this goes, it comes back in here and then goes straight down into the top of the bowl. This one here is for equalising the air pressure inside the bowl, and if the telltale, this one here, which has only got a small capillary feeding it for overflow for the bowl, if it surpasses the ability of, the volume that can be passed through this, it will then raise up through here and come out of this pipe, rather than dumping a large volume of fuel into your motor. Just as mentioned, this here is your telltale. There's a tube inside going up above your fuel level, but it's only got a small, very fine hole through it, so that other splash in the bowl would sort of be getting caught up and running out here. So, but as soon as you do see fuel starting to come out of here, is an indication that your needle and seat has definitely failed. This would only be sort of typical on a bike, a much older 15-20-year-old Mikuni, or one that's had fuel left in it for quite a period of time, where the seat could be damaged or have varnish type material on it. Or quite common is that the breather on the fuel tank has got blocked, and then obviously the tank is pressurizing, and that extra pressure is popping off the needle and seat. And again, on the bottom here you just have a drain bung, 17mm ring spanner. You just undo this bung for draining, but also if you're just doing a main jet change, it's a quick change for a main jet, and you can push the needle jet up if you remove the top off the carb to remove the needle jet as well. Okay, so here we'll just start to pull this carburetor apart and change some jets on it, show you how to make a jet change. Just undo the 4 bolt screws. Make sure you use a good quality Phillips head screwdriver in good condition, and you won't have a problem with it. If for some reason you do find that you ever did round out a bowl screw, or had an old carb with that screws were on their last legs and did round out, an easy way to remove that screw is, if you can't get a pair of vice grips onto it, to just give it a tweak and dislodge the screw and get it turning. What we do suggest you do, is an easy way to do it, is if you go to the shed and get a wood chisel, which carpenters won't like this one, but if it's got a nice sharp edge on it, you can just sort of dig it into the corner of the screw and then give it a quick whack with a hammer, and that'll dig in and twist the screw enough just to break the seal, and then you can remove it. On some of the pumper carbs, you don't have a hope of getting a little vice grip in there, and that's quite a handy way of getting a screw out of there if it has been rounded out. Just take this last one out. Now with a brand new carburetor, you may quite often find that the bowl doesn't release. This one here is easy, it's coming off, but if it doesn't release, just use the softer end of your screwdriver just to give it a tap, just enough to break the seal so that you can get the bowl off. These factory VMs since the 80s have all been running twin independent plastic floats. The brass floats that you do find in some of the older OEM carburetors are no longer available or supported by the factory as a spare part, so if you can't get them off Yamaha or whatever brand it is that the carburetor was specially made for, you may unfortunately be just at the mercy of aftermarket manufacturers, or maybe it's time, if you've got a worn out float, it's most probably a bit of an indication it's time to upgrade to a far better version of the VM carburetor. Now with the main jets, and again touching on that with the float, there is just a multitude of different versions of these been made through the years, and this is where this one here, main jet just undoes here, using this Mikuni tool, which is a nice little alloy thing, doesn't damage, nice soft tool to use for doing that. You've got a splash ring. Now before I just continue, there can be a couple of other different versions of this here which you need to look out for, and you may come across this one here. The screw undoes and the main jet actually comes in from the side of the bowl, like so, just for something a little bit different. There'll be a machine groove on the bottom of the needle jet with an O-ring, and that seals it off into the base of the bowl, and then the main jet comes in from the side. This is common on some of the smaller VM carburetors, but yeah, different things. You may find that on a larger one that's been specially made for whatever the application. And again here we've got, this is our VM38, where this one here, the main jet undoes here, and under the main jet you've then got a jet holder which undoes. This here secures the needle jet in place, and so you just remove that and then to push out your needle jet. But you may also find these jet extenders on some of the smaller 32, 34 VMs that were specially made for some of the bike manufacturers. So it's not until you open your carburetor, if you've got an old carburetor, you're just doing a jet change. What we're saying here, there can be some variations in different carburetor models for some of these things that you're doing. Okay, next to the main jet running parallel with it, you've got a hole down in here. You may not be able to pick that up, but deep down inside there is the pilot jet, which is just a screwdriver head. Just before I do that, I'll just show you, when you get a screwdriver to do this job, try and get one with as parallel a head as you can, so you've got a nice wide blade. If you get a spade type one which has a narrow blade, it increases the chance of not getting a really good purchase on the jet and maybe damaging the jet itself. So you just give it a twist like that, it'll just drop into the groove. Just a little bit of pressure undoes, breaks the seal on it, and you just pull out the jet, and out she comes. Now, same as with the main jet, Mikuni does have quite a range of main jets and pilot jets, which, depending on what carburetor you're working on, you may not always have what are typically found in VMs, what we have here, which is this one here is a VM22210. Pilot jet has eight holes in the side of it, but we have actually seen exactly the same version of this with 6 holes in it. The telltale sign for what this jet is the hole in the end, which is actually counterbored down past the little holes in the side, and then deep down in there is the actual jet size drilling hole, the tiny little hole, you see it in there. Where the other two versions of this, which one has 6 holes and one has no holes, basically other than that the jet does look the same. It just has a little scallop. They both have a little scallop on the end, and the little jet drilling size is right in the end rather than that larger hole that you've got there. With VM carburetors, typically, if not using that VM22210 pilot jet, you may see the 28mm long one, and there's a couple of versions of that, and also there's a 9mm little short version which we actually have in one of the 26mm carbs we sell. So that's why we always impress on people that you must identify your carburetor before ordering spare parts, unless it's for a carburetor that we've sold you. But always do remember, remove a jet and then go onto Mikunioz. You can hover on the jets button, and then off the drop list you can select pilots or mains or needle jets, and from that they're all photographed for dimensions, and you can positively identify which one. The main jet, Kawasaki's typically had a round main jet in their VM carbs, which has a different thread pitch, so you can't mix them up, mainly for the main reason is that the round and the hex jets have a different scale in the jet drilling size. So a 150 in a hex is definitely not a 150 in a round. So that is most important, that you do positively identify jets before making changes, especially on a carb that you've just taken off a motorbike and not sure where or who it was actually originally made for. Now, next we'll just remove the top of the carburetor. So the top just unscrews. And there you've got a spring, and then out comes the slide. The needle in the slide, this one here has a retainer plate for retaining the needle and also the cable, which locks into a keyhole. There are also other versions of this where you may have a holder with 2 screws holding the holder in place, and the cable actually hooks into the holder, and a retainer just slips down over the top of that. This is a lot easier system for making needle clip adjustments, especially on the racetrack. It's nice and quick for doing that. But so worthwhile keeping in mind if you're changing over to one of these carburetors, which is a better version than all the other ones that the factory had made for people through the years. You do need to keep in mind that if you've got a holder type carburetor, your inner cable wire length will be 5 to 10 mil shorter and may not suit this carburetor. Same also while on the cable, all of these VMs we sell have an adjuster on the top like so, which have generally a 6 mil hole in there, and they're designed to take a cable with an end on it, whether it be straight and just a cable end, or a bit of pipe like that, so it slips down in there and has the pipe that locates in the hole. Obviously the rubber slips over it first. And what you may find with some of the OEM carbs, especially say with the later Yamahas, later meaning 80s, you'll find a bit of pipe on there which swivels on top of the carburetor and has a circlip locating it. Now obviously these do not work with us here, and to change from one of those carburetors over to one of these does require the purchase of a different cable. Most probably nice and easy on the Mikunioz site and the VM carburetor page, where you select the size of the carb you're interested in. You'll see all the accessories in there with that carburetor, being throttle and cable assemblies and jets and so on and so forth. Tuner kits, which is what we're doing here today. You may have bought a new carburetor and you've selected a tuner kit, which is a jet set that's required to make this particular carb work on the motor that you have on your motorbike. And in 99% of the time situations, this does need rejetting to suit as from what it's bought at, and every bike has a different range and size of jets that generally to make them operate properly with this carburetor. So once you've got all this stuff out, then you can remove the needle jet, which the needle jet here sits down in here. The main jet on this carburetor and the splash ring hold it in place, and as I said with the other one there, maybe the jet extender holds it in place. Normally you just give it a push with something just to push it down and out. If it's an older carb, you may find that the alloy is growing onto it a bit, or it could be a little bit tight. If you were to try and remove one like that, I would suggest spray a bit of CRC down there and make sure you get something like a little punch or something just to punch it to the side, being very mindful not to damage the thread in there, and try and get it down. There's a locating slot in the side of these, and that's what determines where it sits. Now also with the needle jet, you'll see that there's a couple of sets of numbers stamped on these. First one is a series number. This one here is a 159, and what that series number depicts is the length, the diameter, the height of the shroud, where all these little lumps and bumps are, basically what the features are of this to make it fit correctly into this carburetor. And all different carburetors have a different series of those 3 numbers. You may also, it's worthwhile to have a read of the little editorial at the top of the needle jet page on our Mikunioz site when you hover on jets and then select needle jets, or emulsion tubes they're called by some people. And when you're in there, you'll reading that, you'll see that sometimes the number on there can be a little bit misleading, and it may actually be a common one that we do sell, but all the ones we have a photograph with dimensions on them. The other number on these is the actual, lets you know what size the actual hole is in here, and that could be a P6 or a Q8 or a R2. That number there tells us what size the hole is here, which is then matched up to a particular needle and needle taper to make it operate on whatever engine you have. So that's how you determine what's what with those. And that's basically all stripped down. You've got the needle and seat here, which on another video we'll just run through removing that and a couple of little tricks you need to be aware of when doing it. And that's on another video when we'll go into how to change a needle and seat, and same thing with the tuning. But basically we'll just start to just work a bit in reverse here and put this all back together. So the slide will go in last this time, and then we're just going to put the needle jet back in, where you've just got to do a little bit of a balancing act to get it to slide into the hole, and then rotate it. The shroud will always face back towards the air cleaner, and the fact that it's got a dowel, you can't get that wrong. It'll just locate itself in the right position. Then we put the splash ring back on, and the main jet to hold it all in place. Do that up, tighten it up with your tool, just remembering you're not changing the wheel nuts on your vehicle, you're just putting brass into brass, so it's just a little nip up. And then we'll drop the needle, the pilot jet back in. Again, like when we got it out, you'll just push this in. Yep, that one dropped in pretty easy. That time you just rotate it till you feel it drop in the slot, screw it up, and then once it's tight, just a little bit of a nip up just to hold it in place so it can't come out. And then the bowl just clips back on like so. Easy to tip her upside down now, and just drop all the screws in place. You don't want to tighten one side down, you just want to do a nice even tightening across all four. Just firm them down lightly, and then go back and then just tension them all off in place, and obviously making sure that the bowl's set correctly into the recess, and you're only just trying to compress this cardboard gasket in here. And that's him. Those are done up. Put that off to the side, and just do a final, just work in opposite, put down, and then just nip these ones down. That's it. Then it's a matter of getting your cable. Now, another thing worth mentioning with these here is when buying a new Mikuni, the adjuster here on the top, generally there's plenty of clearance for all your different cable ends, but on the, actually we find that one that the factory does supply on the VM32 and the VM36, both only have an exactly on 6mm hole. So with some of your cables you may find, and this is particular with our twin cable with a 2-into-1 splitter on it, which is actually 6mm, it's just a snug fit, but sometimes you will find it won't. A little bit too much interference in there, and you may have to just get some wet and dry and just work down the end of the outer pipe there a little bit, so that it slides neatly all the way into place and bottoms out correctly. You're not going to see any little score marks you put on there, it'll all be covered by the rubber. But also, and the nice thing about that is means you've got a really nice firm fit, everything's nice and nicely held in place. But that's just something you may find with the VM32 and the VM36 with some cable ends. So reassembling, you'll just pop your rubber onto your fitting. I'll just pop it all on here now, so it's nice and easy. This cable's not connected to a set of handlebars or a bike. And basically that just pushes through like so, drops into the adjuster, and then what you would do is just put it through the middle of your spring, and then compress up your spring, hold it either side of the cable so you're not bending your cable, and it just all sits there nicely like that. Obviously when it's on the handlebars you may have a lot less space and things do sometimes get a little tricky. You're replacing with your new needle if you've got a new needle to go in and you're doing a needle change or whatever, or to just change a clip position you can just pull up the plate and the needle will come out without having to disconnect. But in this case where you're doing you've got it off the carburetor, so you'll pop that down in there, and then you'll push this down. I think you can see properly here, it'll just go down into the keyhole and then goes off to the side and pulls up into the slot, so it's held in place. And then that plate, you'll see it's got the little tag there that drops into that slot, so like so that means that the cable can't move out or jump out, and in the centre the round ring there just holds the needle in position, so it's all good and done. I'll just remove that again just for a bit of ease, just to screw this on, seeing as we're not actually connected to a motorcycle. And pull that off there. So just going back here, when you're putting it in the carb, there's a dowel there, so you're locating dowel. If you're a single application, you won't get it wrong. The cutaway always faces the air cleaner side, so that just pops in there like so, and then you just screw the top back down onto the carburetor. Just wait for the threads to line up, and there you go. I've left that out, but just for finishing off here, that doesn't matter, I'll pull it apart in a second. Now, the thing I did need to mention is if you've got twin carbies, say for instance on an XS650 or an old Triumph T140, always keep in mind if you're running a left and a right hand, that means the dowel pin is on opposite sides, and it can be quite easy to, when you're not thinking about things, drop the wrong slide in the wrong hole. And what happens there is, instead of your cutaway being on this side, it can be on the other side, which will give you all sorts of grief when you start to try to run and tune the bike. So always just do be very mindful that when you're doing it, you've got the right slide on the right side. And we have occasionally had people call us up with tuning problems and scratching their head, and that's usually the first thing we say, just go and double check that. And from time to time that has been what's been the problem. Drop him down there, and yeah, apart from that, just bolt him on, connect up the fuel, and get the motor running, set your idle, feather the throttle a bit to get that going, set your mixture, just check it, and normally start at about 1 1/4 turns out, and yeah, other than that, we've got a tuning video on how to tune the carb from this stage here, but that's basically just how to change your jets, get familiar with your carburetor, and go and have some fun with it. We hope you found that video helpful. Please do browse through our list of other videos we have regarding our Mikunioz products, and for all other information regarding Mikunioz kits, parts and accessories, find us on mikunioz.com.